Hi, and welcome to the latest in our Smart Pension Connect webinar series. I'm Darren Philp and I'm Director of Policy and Market Engagement here at Smart Pension. And in this series, I interview guests from across the pensions and the fintech sectors about current trends and hot topics. And today's topic is sustainability, and we're going to discuss how Smart Pension is looking to respond to that challenge. And to discuss this, I'm delighted to be joined by James Lawrence, who's our Head of Investment Proposition here at Smart. Hi James, thank you very much for joining us today.
Good to see you, Darren.
So let's get straight into it and let's start at the top here. Why is sustainable investing important and why is it a key priority for us here at Smart Pension?
It's a great question. So sustainability really is everything around us at the moment. I think pensions historically have been quite difficult for members to engage with and even for clients to engage with as well. Sustainability is everything you see on the news. You see kind of climate change, you see wildfires, you see flooding, and you see things you can do about it as well. So, you know, you've got things like driving electric vehicles and going veggie. Yeah. The crossover between pensions and all of those items is huge, really. And we've got such a big role to play in sustainability. You know, we see lots of stats from Make My Money Matter, really powerful things around the 21 times campaign, where if you cut out certain things like flying and veggies and changing your energy supplier, all of those combined, you know, if you switch to a green pension, 21 times the impact it has as those things combined. So wow. really huge ways of making a difference to the world around us. And it helps to bring pensions as well to life for members when they can see the difference, you know, when they can see how the pensions really impact us or impact themselves. That's why it's really important for us at Smart Pension, because we want to make a change. We want to build a future for people to be able to retire into. I personally want to build a future for my 1-year-old to retire into and have a good, sustainable world to live in. And so we can really make a huge difference with pensions by doing that. So
it's an exciting time to be involved in sort of developing the scheme's investment strategy and sort of meeting the commitments and stuff. So how do we approach developing our investment strategy and our engagement strategy with members to meet the sort of strategic aims that you were just talking about?
We have to be robust, really, in the way we approach this. We have to, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about greenwashing, and that's rife in the industry, if we're being perfectly honest, in terms of people pledging things, marketing things in certain ways that don't make a real world impact. So we have to be really robust around how we think about pensions, how we build frameworks. So we, for example, have just partnered with the IGCC. They love acronyms within the kind of sustainability world.
Well, we love it.
Yeah, exactly. We do love them. But they provide a really robust way of thinking about climate change and net zero. So that's kind of the first way of doing it, is getting that framework in place. It's about harnessing everything you have, you know, to hand. So at Smart, we've got some great investment managers that we partner with, people like Natixis and DWS and JP Morgans and others of the world, and using their tools and their thinking, and they're real leaders in this space, and they can really help us to build products. They can help us to explore avenues and different ways of thinking when it comes to climate change. There's a kind of myriad of real avenues that we can take when we look at net zero and climate change.
And that strategic partnerships that we have is really important, because it really allows us to sort of develop best of breed thinking in this. And, you know, for the conversations I've been involved in, which is not as many as you, but it's that collaboration, that partnership approach that really does sort of shine through on some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it bear fruit with people. You know, we've got the private credit fund in our default, one of, you know, the first private credit mandates in a DC pension scheme. And we're using that leverage that we have with our managers to work on really interesting engagement and stewardship ideas in particular, investing in climate solutions for the future. And you talked around member engagement as well, using those partners to deliver us really interesting investment projects, and then using our tech platform to really break down those barriers is so powerful in the fight for this.
And there's going to be a lot of change, isn't there, in the next few years, and it's exciting times. As you indicated, you can't have a conversation about sustainable investment and climate and all of that type of stuff without greenwashing. At least talking about greenwashing. And you know, we've obviously at Smart made a commitment to net zero before 2050. So you know, the key question to you, James, is okay, we've made the pledge. How are we going to deliver that? And importantly, you know, how are we going to judge whether we've been successful or not?
Yeah, as I mentioned, greenwashing is really rife in the industry. we've had some certain initiatives that have tried to help with that. So we had the SFDR, another great acronym, Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation. So lots of managers now, depending on where they base their funds, have to declare how green they are on a scale. What we've actually found is that some managers have said everything they do is green. So it hasn't really moved the dial when it comes to greenwashing. I think we've all got a part to play along the whole value chain in investments and in pensions, from individual members testing their pension schemes and seeing where they're making an impact, from clients when they're picking investments and picking providers like ourselves, from the gatekeepers, the benefit consultancies when they're doing work around choosing providers on behalf of clients. They've got a real job to do to focus on how these pension schemes and providers are making a difference and not just listening to the PR and the marketing spin sometimes around it. And then I guess as well that the regulators have a huge role to play in this. And I think, TPR and DWP have got a difficult job on their hands at the moment because there's so much evolving thinking in climate change. You've got TCFD, you've got the new consultations, but I think they're doing a great job in a lot of ways. They're taking a very collaborative approach to it. And I think that really helps to open up discussions in lots of different areas, including greenwashing. And I think, when you speak to real, industry experts on this, I think they're starting to get an opinion or view on how they regulate a lot of these areas and prevent that greenwashing.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And I think that having all the pledges and having the conversation has been really, really powerful. Yeah, and just thinking back, we weren't having these conversations with this industry 5 years ago. No, and I think there has been a fundamental shift in how trustees and pension schemes and the asset owners more generally are thinking about this stuff.
It's core to everything that we do now, and so it should be really. I mean, sustainability used to be quite narrow focus. You think about these small, really niche funds sometimes, but now ESG and sustainability, whatever kind of term you use, has to filter into everything you do.
Yeah.
Because we're building investments for the future, and we're investing in companies that are, that need to be around in the future as well. So it's a really catch-all term now.
One of the things that often gets raised when you're having conversations on this is divestment. Yeah, and if a company is, I don't know, producing oil or whatever, should we just sort of stop investing of them? The argument is a lot more sophisticated and complicated than that, isn't it? So,
it's very nuanced.
So what's our approach to the whole disinvestment agenda? And how do we sort of engage, as the Master Trust to really make a difference?
Yeah, as you say, it's a very nuanced discussion at the moment, and really it's quite a hot topic. So we've done a lot of thinking around disinvestment and what it actually does, because sometimes, depending on what type of investments you have, it doesn't have the impact people think it does sometimes. From our perspective, it really is a last resort. It can send a signal in the right way, but as you say, I think the key for the next 20, 30 years will be engagement, it will be stewardship, it will be making sure you have those routes into companies and you have those conversations at the right level. So, we're seeing some of the biggest oil and coal producers, that some of the biggest investors in green energy, and some of them obviously have the PR spin around that, of course. But you need to be in that conversation in the first place to work out who's doing the right things in this area. So for us, disinvestment does have a place, and we do disinvest from certain areas. For example, UN Global Compact violators. So the real worst companies will disinvest from, but we very much believe in being in the conversation, and we think that's how DC schemes in general should be.
And being, as you say, being in that conversation is important. And again, going back a few years, trustees and schemes wouldn't necessarily want to be involved in that conversation or have the ability to be involved in that conversation. So that's changed quite massively as well.
Yeah, definitely. We've gone from one extreme where, as you say, everything was down to the investment manager. Everything was delegated to them. And I think really that going forwards, it needs to be a bit more of a balance.
Yeah.
So we've got some great technology around stewardship and voting. We've got some great initiatives in the industry, like the Occupational Pensions Stewardship Council.
I thought you were going to give me another acronym.
No, what it is, the OPSC. I could have gone with that. But we've, and we're very much engaged with these initiatives as well. And we think that those kind of discussions really help sharpen the mind, because investments and pensions, there's quite a few layers to it. You've got platforms and fund managers, and you've got companies. We need to be able to break down those barriers and work out where we should engage. So from my perspective, it's about getting that balance. I don't think trustees should be engaging on everything. They should have their priorities. They should understand their own bandwidths and governance bandwidths. And they should realise where managers come in as well, because managers have the expertise. Managers have, the real dedicated resource to a lot of this. So from my perspective, it's really a balance between where we were in the old world and completely doing it all yourself.
So partnership and collaboration
completely
again comes through to the fore, doesn't it? So, we've talked quite a lot in terms of sort of general stuff at the moment around sort of greenwashing, the strategy, what your aims are and stuff. And, you've been at Smart for how long now?
Just over 4 months.
Just over 4 months. Yeah. And, so you've obviously hit the ground running from your previous experience, and you've got big ideas for change. So what's going to happen next year? What's your key sort of priorities for you and your team?
2022.
In 2022?
It's going to be huge. It's going to be a big year for a number of reasons. So we're developing, I mentioned the net zero roadmaps. We've got the IIGCC that we're working with, and we're looking to develop a really robust net zero framework. And we've not seen a huge amount of that in the industry yet because it's difficult to do. It's not an easy subject. So early next year, we're going to be releasing our net zero framework and hopefully push the boundaries and work with some of our investment managers to do that. Look at an impact investment as well. So we want to make an impact across the whole of our £2 billion pension fund. But we want to look around if there's specific themes that we can make an impact on as well. So we're working with people like the Impact Investing Institute, using their principles and developing that impact framework. So again, early next year, that'll be something we'll be looking to do. And then in terms of sustainability, the stewardship piece, I think, is going to be critical. So we're really going to be focusing on how we engage with our managers, how we engage with underlying companies in a really sustainable and robust way, and working out where our stewardship priorities are. So from a sustainability perspective, we'll be pretty busy.
It's going to be an interesting year, isn't
Definitely.
it? Well, we're going to have to get you back and sort of talk a bit about, whether you met all your targets maybe at the end of next year. So, James, that's absolutely brilliant. When we do these sort of webinars, we do have sort of 5 quickfire questions just to sort of get a bit of insight into your career and what made you the person you are today. I'll ask you some of these sort of quickfire questions, and I always get told to focus on short answers. So what was the one lesson you feel helped you most throughout your career?
I think putting yourself in the shoes of the person above you in your organisation or in your, or your client, for example, not just focusing on your job, but really that's how you progress, I think, is thinking that next level. And when you're doing pieces of work, it's focusing on who's the audience for that, and then thinking in that lens.
Yeah, and that's a good one. And knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self?
I think it doesn't matter how young you are, how junior you are, particularly when you're in a room full of very experienced people and senior people. You've always got an opinion that matters, and you can always add value and insight. So, for people that are coming through the ranks and analysts, very much your opinion does matter, and you can add value in all types of meetings.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot more focus now, or I've started seeing more focus on sort of chairs of meetings being more inclusive and making sure that people, get the opportunity to speak.
Because it gives you that diversity of thought as well when you've got people that have got a fresh pair of eyes.
Yeah, they're really important, You're an investment guru, and if you could create a rule for the day as an investment guru that everyone in the world had to follow, what would it be?
That's a really good question. So I think I'm going to take it outside of investments for this one.
No, absolutely
that's all
fine,
right. I think there's a lot of...
I was just bigging up your creds on this.
I appreciate it. There's a lot of negativity sometimes, I think, online in particular. So I think my one rule would probably be if you're that way inclined that you have to say things that are negative, then you have to balance it with something positive as well. I think gratitude and positivity have a huge role to play in the world, and we sometimes struggle with that balance.
Yeah, when we've asked other people on these before, people have said something very similar, actually. Just like, just be nice.
It's just that simple, yeah.
What advice would you give someone starting out in their pensions career? Apart from don't do it.
Definitely, that wouldn't be my advice. Do it. I think networking is such a critical skill that's really overlooked, and it's quite difficult when you're younger and you go to these events sometimes and you feel a bit sidelined because you maybe don't know anyone there. But just throw yourself into the deep end. People are very receptive to speaking and opening up doors. And I think it really helps you focus on where you want to be in the industry and who you want to work with, and just gives you lots of great insight and expertise. So network, despite how awkward it may feel.
Yeah, and it's obviously been quite difficult over the past couple of years or whatever, given everything that's been going on.
Yeah.
Which is a lovely segue into, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned in the last 12 months?
I think personally for me, it's I've got a 1-year-old now, moved jobs, as you said, about 4 or 5 months ago, moved house about a month ago, all during a global pandemic. So maybe don't try and fit as many life events into short periods of time, particularly when there's a global pandemic on. Really would be my key piece of advice.
And also while delivering a fantastic 2022 for Smart as well.
Exactly, trying to. Yeah. It's a very busy time right now.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being a good sport and answering those questions,
Thanks,
James. And thanks very much for taking the time to talk to us today. And we'll definitely get you back to hold you to account, because that's what this sustainable investing is all about and stuff. And thank you for tuning in and watching the latest Smart Pension Connect webinar. We do these monthly, so do keep an eye out on social media for the next one. And you can catch up on previous webinars by visiting the Smart Pension website. So thanks again, James, for joining us today. And thanks again to you for tuning in. Until next time, goodbye.